it's not funny when you know that there is something that can be done and you're powerless to do it. I could not have gone in there all gung-ho and said, you're wrong, you can't do that. It's the worst possible thing that you can give these people. I would have lost my job. And besides, it wouldn't have done any good. Nobody would have listened.
Sarah, how did you find carnivore?
It's been an almost lifelong obsession with my weight, which I didn't conquer on a permanent basis for many years. I did try very hard, certainly. I became what I consider something of an expert in the infamous calories in, calories out method, which I absolutely honored to the last half calorie. And if I could save a half a calorie, believe me, I would. And eventually I thought something isn't hitting the mark here somehow, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I've been doing this for such a long time. If you had to ask me how many calories are in a quarter of an apple, I could tell you. But it wasn't working. It did work. It did work for a long time. But eventually I was getting to the point where I was going to bed almost tearful with hunger because I couldn't allow myself to eat anymore. I'd got to the end of my calorie allowance for the day and I could not go over it. I thought, no, something isn't ringing true. And at that point, I was in a position where I could start online research. The name Professor Tim Noakes kept on and on coming up. And I started listening to some of the things that he was saying. But as soon as he said, and you must increase your fat intake, I thought, what utter nonsense. Everybody knows that fat makes fat. I will not touch it. And I left it. Then on Facebook one day, I can't remember how it happened. You know how Facebook is, they are spying on you all the time. Up popped a South African banting group. And I decided to have a dig into that. And the success stories were absolutely incredible. And the joy, this was what really gripped me about this group, was the joy coming through in almost every post. Look what I've done. Look what I've done. This was me. Now look at me. And it was so easy. And I'm thinking, no diet is easy, dear. And when I started reading through what they were doing, and I thought, well, maybe this is something that I should really give some thought to. Maybe I'm not the big expert that I always thought I was, and I was brought down to earth with a big bump when I read through the material, and I got Tim Noakes's, one of his first books was The Real Meal Revolution, which I read inside out and backwards and forwards. It's a really great starting point. And then I joined the banting group, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I was losing weight, and pork crackling, bring it on. And initially, of course, I was, well, I'll just have a little bit. I won't go crazy. I won't eat 2 pork chops with the crackling. No, you can't do that. And eventually, I sort of managed to calm down and realize that yes, I could eat it. And what's more, I did. And once I got the hang of the banting thing, which is fairly low key as a low carbohydrate lifestyle goes, the weight loss did start to slow down. And obviously, as I think is fairly common with most people, you start to creep up with your carbohydrate intake, and you start to think this little bit won't matter. And of course it does. I came across a man called Brett Lloyd. You have most probably heard of Brett Lloyd. He's a very, very vocal carnivore who had an enormous amount of very severe health problems, which once he'd gone carnivore simply melted away. And I have no idea why, he decided to join our Banting group. Because it's almost, at that point it was almost entirely South African, but a lot of people from other countries started joining it. At the moment, it's a very big group. It's a couple of million, as far as I know, and it's fairly widespread. There are British people and Kenyans and all sorts all over the place, and it's. He started talking about carnivore on the Banting group, and a lot of people started asking, "What Ivor? What do you eat?" And he laid, and he's one of these straight talkers. He laid it down. I eat beef, salt, and water. And we all thought, really? Well, that sounds a bit scary. And the more and bacon. That's another thing that he loves, is bacon. And the more he kept on talking about this carnivore lifestyle, the more I thought, I have to find out a little bit more about this. So I started digging. And of course, you come to the Sean Bakers and the Ken Berries and what have you. And they were, and of course, one of my favorites is Dr. Robert Sivers. And they are absolutely unequivocal in what they say. They don't mince their words, pardon the pun, and they don't try to soften the blow. Do this carnivore thing. It's going to change your life. And I thought, well, let's have a bash. I've got nothing to lose. And at that point, my weight was beginning to creep up a tiny bit. Then I'd get a grip on it and it would go down again. But I've stayed more or less the same weight for 3 years, and that on calories in and calories out was almost impossible. It really was a struggle of note. And I've never managed to maintain my weight using that method. Never. It's either been starvation or absolute feast, but there's been no middle point, no middle path to take on no moderation. And I couldn't deal with that anymore. And when I started carnivore, I won't say I found it difficult, but I live with my husband and my older son, and although my older son Jason he's very interested in the carnivore lifestyle, and he does try his best to follow as best he can. But my husband isn't interested at all. He's extremely supportive. I couldn't have asked for a more supportive husband. He will back me in anything. And he's wonderful like that, but he's not interested in actually taking something like this on. So it's been quite difficult in that I have to make 2 sets of meals. He will have mashed potatoes or rice or whatever. And this, I must say, the traditional South African way of cooking is very, very heavy-handed on things like sugar. Vegetables are often cooked in seed oils and sugar. He loves a thing that's called boerepampun, which literally translated means farmer's pumpkin, and it is made with butter and sugar, and it's like eating pudding. It's not a vegetable as such, but that's the way they eat it, and he loves that. So if I make anything like that for him, he's in seventh heaven. But it's difficult for me to keep a complete separation between his meals and my meals. I'm never tempted to eat something like that. My background is not like that anyway. Coming from England, we don't eat our vegetables like that. So it's that's been also an education for me as well, to visit his family and to be fed this kind of thing. And also because I'm sticking out like a sore thumb. I'm the only one who says no thank you to cake, and no thank you to biscuits, no thank you to this, no thank. It's just endless. One of the reasons why I think perhaps this lifestyle suits me is because I am someone who likes to buck the system, and I enjoy saying I don't eat that. And it's been difficult in that I have to make separate meals, but it's been an eye opener for me because it's so easy. What am I having for dinner tonight? Probably mince. If not mince, it'll be chicken. But I don't worry about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. It's the simplest thing. I'll cook what I want, and then I add the things that are going to make my husband happy. And then, of course, when he doesn't eat the full portion of the meat, I'm thinking all the time, oh, that's great. There's my lunch tomorrow. And it's never been I don't look at the leftovers and think, oh, so much wasted food. It's never wasted. It's great. The dogs get the potatoes. The dogs will get the vegetable leftovers, but no, I get the meat. It hasn't been. I really was, when I first saw what Brett was posting, I thought, I'm not going to deal with this, but let me give it a shot. I can remember starting Banting. Oh, I made all the excuses under the sun. I was newly widowed. I had 4 children at home, 2 of whom were still at school. And I said, I can't afford that. All that steak? No, I can't afford it. The butter? Are you joking? I can't afford that. And I just kept on and on and on making the excuses. And when I sat down one day and I thought, how much am I spending on cereals? How much am I spending on bread? How much am I spending on all of these things, which I merrily eat? If I took that away and I spent it on fish and meat and butter and cheese, what would be the difference? My children can still eat those things, and I will just add what they want to their portion of on any meal. And I stopped the excuses. I just realized I'm fooling myself. It's me who I'm lying to myself. So I stopped, and within a few weeks, I saw the difference. And I was happy. There was the thing that I like best about this lifestyle is the guilt-free eating. If I want pork chops, if I want mince, if I want a steak with butter on it, oh, yummy. That's what I'll have. If it's there, I can eat it. And it's that dreadful guilt is gone. I can't tell you how many nights I've cried myself to sleep thinking, I've screwed up again. How many more times am I going to try this and it's not going to work? It's me. It's not the diet. I'm the one who's screwed up. And it was soul destroying, absolutely soul destroying, to go week after week after week, starving, hungry, and you increase your activity and you're rushing off here and rushing off there and weight training, and you get to Friday and stand on the scales and either nothing's happened or worse, you've put on weight, and it's just been awful. So this, and then of course once I've always been really. I hate euphemisms, and I'm really very down to earth, and I don't like it when people dress things up and say, give them pretty clothes when they don't deserve to have pretty clothes. It is what it is. A diet is a diet, and it wasn't until I accepted that the low carbohydrate way of life is a lifestyle. It is. When I accepted that, everything changed. And now I stick largely to the carnivore way of eating. First of all, because I like it. Secondly, because it's easy. And thirdly, there's definitely a change in how I feel. Without adding, if I do add in vegetables, it's usually just one, and it will usually be something like avocado, which of course is not a vegetable, but I might have half an avocado, or I might have a small portion of plain roasted pumpkin, or I might have green beans, but it's not often, and I don't. I might get halfway through it and think, I don't know why I'm eating this. I don't really want it. And if I'm going to leave anything on my plate, it'll be that. Um, it's what I've now come to call keto-vore, because most of the time I will eat carnivore, and if I do slide a bit, it'll definitely be for a vegetable. At one point, I was eating some berries as well, which I might from time to time have, but I do see the results on the scales within days. And I don't really think that the 5 minutes worth of pleasure is worth the agonizing over the scales when I see the results. The other thing that I'm trying to wean myself off is dairy products. I love dairy, absolutely love dairy, but I don't think it loves me. So I think it's time for me to have a divorce and stick off the cheese and the cream. For me, also, the berries were just a vehicle for the cream. I've been like that since I was a child. If my mother dished up a pudding, I would scrape the cream off the top and eat that. And she wouldn't have that. You had to eat it all. But for me, the pudding was the vehicle for the cream. And I dare not have something like that in the house now, simply because I know that, and my son teases me about it. He says, "Are you going to have coffee with your cream again today?" And it's a real problem. So rather than go back down that slippery slope again, you rather cut it out. So I think dairy for me, and I think for a great many people, especially women, dairy is not a great idea. It's not a great addition to your carnivore lifestyle, although it is, as we all know, it's perfectly acceptable. It's an animal product, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best choice. But I have Brett Lloyd to thank for introducing me to the carnivore lifestyle, and I think there are a lot of people. I know of quite a number on that Banting group who came to carnivore through him and his involvement with that group, and it was a real revelation that people could eat this way, and people could be well nourished this way, and that people could be satisfied and happy with their choices. My husband's family worry tremendously when I visit them. He said, "All you're going to have?" "Yes, I'm full. I can't eat anymore. Thank you." We have the South African version of the barbecue is the braai, and believe me, until you've been to a South African braai, you don't know what you're missing. Honestly, it's a carnivore dream. The women mostly compete to make the most interesting salads, and that consists mainly of things that don't belong in a salad, like bananas and condensed milk. And yes, there is a famous South African salad, which part of one of the ingredients is an entire tin of condensed milk, plus bacon and bananas. It's
I'm sorry,
scary.
I've got to interrupt you here. I think a banana is so offensive, it doesn't even belong on a fruit salad, let alone a regular salad.
A friend of mine brought this salad to one of our brides many years ago, and she said, "Have you ever had it?" And I said, "No." She said, "You're going to love it," and I did. It was for a carbohydrate addict, it is an absolute monster. It's fantastic. But this is what all the women do. They make all these crazy weird salads with all sorts of sugar in it, and the men heap massive piles of meat onto the fire. So for a carnivore, oh my goodness, a braai is a dream. So that's easy for me. When we go somewhere and someone's having a braai, I just make a huge fuss about all the meat and say, "Oh, this looks wonderful. That looks fantastic," and nobody tends to really notice that I didn't go anywhere near the baked potatoes, the potato salad, and all the rest of it, because I'm eating. So nobody's really looking at me, which is great. I don't mind if someone says, "Where's your salad?" And I then can say, "I don't eat it. I'm carnivore." And everyone says, "What? What do you mean?" Then I'm quite happy to explain. But I also do feel that there is a time and a place for everything. You don't want to hijack somebody's celebration with your description of, in minute detail, of what you do and don't eat. It's not the time or the place. But having said that, you wanted to encourage people, ordinary people, to get out there and talk about why we do what we do, because it's so important. And I think one of the things that is odd about this whole concept is that none of us, well, I suppose there are a few, but most of us are not standing there saying, you can find out all about this wonderful carnivore diet if you pay me for my book, or you pay me for whatever. It's not a secret. If you want to find out about the carnivore diet, Google it. The information is there for free, for gratis. Google it and find out. But I think it's as you pointed out, extremely important that we make sure that other people understand what it is and what it can do for you. Last year, for example, in early March, I was cooking. We use gas, and it was an extremely hot night, and I had the window open, and a breeze blew the flame onto my blouse, and I was very badly burned, extremely badly, actually. I was told, at the time I was working at an old age home where we had a lot of medical staff. I went back to work after about 10 days, and when the wound sister checked my dressings, she said, "Oh, you shouldn't be at work. This is going to take such a long time to heal. You shouldn't be at work, and you're going to be badly scarred." My right-hand side of my back caught fire up into my armpit, and the only scars I have left are one small one there and one small one just below my shoulder. And I'm firmly convinced that that is because my diet had no sugar in it. There were no carbohydrates in my diet for the infections to feed on, because there were infections. The wounds did become infected initially, but as I say, because I don't consume any carbohydrates, there was nothing for it to feed on. And within about 3 weeks, I was completely healed. And when the wound sister said she wanted to check on my burns and change my dressings, I said, "There aren't any dressings." She said, "No, you all know that was very bad. You should have dressings on it. Let me have a look. I'll change them for you." And when she checked it, she said, "I don't believe it. There's only those couple of scars left. Everything else is gone." At that point, it just looked like I had bad sunburn. And it was, the pain was gone. I was off all medication within 2 weeks. And it was, she said she couldn't believe it. She'd never seen anything like it. So I'm firmly convinced that it was the fact that I was not eating sugar. There was no sugar for it to feed on. It was quite a revelation, and things that have pestered me, like my asthma, I don't even know where my asthma medication is, to be honest with you. It's around here somewhere, but I don't think I have taken my asthma medication in 2 years. I haven't bought any in 2 years. I don't need it. I don't wheeze anymore. I don't cough. And that again, it's in itself has been a revelation. At one point, it was becoming quite a worry to me, and I still keep my asthma pump in my car just in case, but I don't. I'm sure it must be out of date. I should actually throw it away. I don't know if it'll be any good to me. If I have an asthma attack, it'll probably won't even work. I started getting arthritis in my hands, and by and large, that's also mostly gone. Every now and again, I get a bit of an ache, but it was becoming really quite painful about 4 years ago, and I would say within 6 months of starting the low carb way, it was really eased, and now the longer I don't eat any carbohydrates, the better it is. I don't know if it'll ever be completely gone, but it's noticeably better. And I'm also noticeably far more even-tempered as well. Some people have remarked on it. I don't want to tell you that I have
a husband or children.
Well, no. What can I say? Maybe one or two of my children, and my husband as well. When we go shopping, sometimes he says, "You did very well today." It's my reputation for losing my temper with idiot shoppers is quite marked, but I definitely am an awful lot more even-tempered than I was, and I think it's because you get stressed so easily when you're hungry, and you've got a headache, and nothing seems to take it away, and all you can think of is getting home and having something to eat. Now I forget to feed my family. I forget, oh, it's 3:00. You didn't have lunch, did you? It's because I didn't either, and it just doesn't occur to me. And everybody's looking at me, daggers. No, we didn't have lunch. So it's been a very, very big change to my lifestyle, but I don't regret for a minute doing what I've done.
Nice. So just can I just clarify a timeline firstly? So you mentioned 3 years before. Is that 3 years? Excuse me. Is that 3 years kind of banting and then carnivore, or is that 3 years all carnivore?
It's a total of 4 years that I have been on a low carbohydrate lifestyle, but it's 2 years exactly. Actually, it's 2 years that I started carnivore, and certainly for the first 6 months that I was carnivore, I was absolutely rigid. I didn't stray off it at all, and I think part of the reason for that was because I wanted to give it a fair chance. I wanted to see what kind of difference it was going to make. I have to say, though, oddly enough, it didn't make much of a difference to my weight at all. And when I'm also a member of another Facebook group, which is the South African Carnivore group. And when I mentioned it on this group, quite a number of other members said, you need to remember that there are things you need to heal from before you lose weight. And I thought, well, like what? I'm fine. But you don't know that, do you? You don't know that you're fine. You can't see all the funny bits and pieces that are going on inside you. And you do need to give yourself time to heal. And yes, there will be times when you will go off as I've said before, I consider myself a ketovore. So every now and again, I will have vegetables. My big weakness is cheesecake, and every now and again, I might have a piece of cheesecake. But if we went to a coffee shop and there was no cheesecake available, I wouldn't have anything, simply because I don't want it. And it's quite funny whenever we do go, and my husband will order a piece of chocolate cake. When the waitress comes with the two coffees and the one cake, she'll always put it in front of me, and I feel quite righteous when I push it away and in his direction. But I really, really, really don't want it. Sometimes
Well,
somebody might buy me a 90% dark chocolate, and it will probably take me 2 weeks to eat it. I really lost the desire for things like that.
so just on the topic of the cake, you kind of feel good going, no, it's for him. And then going back to a comment you made earlier, you said like you actually enjoy being able to say no thank you to things.
I do.
It's really nice, that feeling of self-control and empowerment that you get from just going, this, I used to be under the control of this stuff all the time, and now I can just
Yes.
go, no, I don't need any of it.
I think that's another wonderful thing about this lifestyle, is that you are not being controlled by this little white grain that everyone loves so much. For goodness sake, who's the adult here? You stop being such a child. But it's so powerful, and it controls you. And when you get to the point where you think, no, it doesn't. I don't have to have that, and I don't want it. And when you start being able to say easily and confidently, no, thank you, I don't eat that. It's the most incredible feeling. And what's even better is when you do that in public and you go home and you just make yourself a coffee or have a glass of water, or and you're not rushing for the biscuit tin or make yourself a sandwich because you are feeling so deprived that you didn't eat that cake. Now you have to fill the gap with some biscuits or whatever. It's you do it in public and you do it in private, and that's what's so wonderful, is that you don't let yourself down. You
Mm.
have stood up for yourself, and when you go home and you're on your own, you just carry on. You don't stab yourself in the back, and it takes a while, till you can honestly and truthfully say, I don't want it. And once you get to that point, that control that you now have over what you eat, it extends into so many other areas of your life. Once you are able to control that, you start being able to control things like relationships which are not working, or your work life. If you have a difficult colleague, somehow this confidence that you have got around food washes into so many other areas, and you somehow find yourself saying to your troublesome colleague, no, unfortunately, I can't do half your project for you. I'm very busy. Maybe you should ask the boss for some help. It's really amazing how you develop this confidence.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder if you've actually, during this interview, if you've actually answered the reason that this happens earlier on. You were talking about being hangry before, and
Very.
how, I wonder, I don't know if this is 100% of it, but I wonder the fact that, you and I are no longer hangry anymore, right?
No.
We're no longer starving ourselves, that when we do have that difficult colleague, or when we do have that relationship that might be a little bit, um, we deal with them so much better because we don't have something at the back of our minds going, okay, it's almost time to eat now. When's that snack?
Yes.
That constant, it's like the sugar thing just constantly there going, come on, come on. I haven't had any for a while. Come on. And that makes everything else so much more difficult in life.
It definitely does. I always prided myself. All the diet magazines and books always say never go shopping on an empty stomach, and I always used to say, I can do that. I'm not influenced. I can do that, and I would buy. Oh, peanut butter! My goodness, I could eat peanut butter out of the jar with a spoon, and it would be gone before sort of day two. Um, all that sort of thing. I would be buying it, knowing I was not buying it for my family. It was for me, and very often I'd look at something and I'd think, oh, the boys would like that, knowing very well that they would probably not even get a chance to taste it. I was going to eat it. And yes, I was hangry. I was. And now I'm not. And I'm quite calm about it. I don't have a set meal time. I don't sit everybody down at 6:15, absolutely rigidly. We eat more or less whenever we feel like we're going to eat. And if that happens to be a meal time I don't really want to join in with, then I don't. Um, and usually my one meal of the day will be dinner. That the reason why I choose that meal specifically is not for some magic effect that it has on me, but when I was working, and I was retrenched 3 months ago, so being at home at this time of the day is new to me. But when I was working, it was the only meal I got a chance to cook. I was leaving home at 5:15 in the morning, so breakfast was out of the question. I was very busy at work and I never ate lunch at work. So it just happened sort of naturally that I ended up OMAD. And I've stuck with that for many years now, even before I started low carb lifestyle. But my goodness, it was difficult to stick to when all you're eating is carbohydrates, because by the time you get home, you are ready to kill. You are so hungry, and I would just make a beeline for the kitchen, and I didn't get a chance to talk to the children or do anything else. I just wanted to cook. I am hungry. Whereas this way, I'd come home, chat to my husband for a bit, think about what I was going to cook, lay the table. There was no big rush, no big drama, and then most of the time I don't even finish my dinner because it's really enough. I try to make sure that there's plenty of fat with it, of whatever kind. I like to cook with lard or butter, sometimes olive oil, but coconut oil as well. But usually it's lard or butter. And was funny. Not long ago, I went to a supermarket I don't usually use, and they stock this particular branch anyway. They stock only lean and very lean mince, and I didn't have the time to run around to another supermarket, so I bought it. And when I dished it up, my son said, "This is very dry mince. What happened? Why isn't it fatty?" I said, "Oh, this is where I bought it, and they don't stock ordinary mince." He said, "Oh, don't buy that again. It's not very nice." I said, "Oh, stick some butter on it and it'll improve the taste." I had to. I really did. I had to add a lot of butter to that meal that night because it wasn't appetizing. And my son noticed the difference immediately. And as I say, he doesn't even eat on a sort of an official low carbohydrate way, but it for him something wasn't right. And it's become so normal to add fat to everything. I think my husband is watching to see if keel over from a heart attack any minute. But and I don't dare, now I've only been we've been married 3 years now, and I've only been to the doctor, I don't know, maybe 3 times in the time we've been married, and it's his doctor, his family doctor, and I don't dare tell him what the sort of things I eat, because he's quite an old-fashioned doctor, and I think his eyebrows will definitely stay up in his hairline for some time if I have to tell him what exactly my diet consists of, which actually isn't much if you think about it. What really do we eat? Not much, and it's perfectly satisfying.
And perfectly nutritious. Maybe if you do have to eventually talk to the doctor about your diet, when he says, "What do you eat?" maybe you can say, "Well, do you know Professor Tim Noakes?" Does that give you a hint?
Yeah. Does that ring any bells?
Mm.
I must say, I find Professor Tim Noakes is something of a hero for me. He was prepared to give up almost everything that was important to him in his life to be able to say, "I was wrong. The high carbohydrate intake that, of course, he was well known as a sports scientist at the time. He said I'm wrong. This is not the way sports people should be eating, and in fact, he said it's not the way anyone should be eating." And when he stood up for what he had come to understand was right, and was prepared to almost lose his professional standing as a result, I thought there has to be something in this. That a man like him will go this far. There's got to be something in it, and he was the one really who piqued my interest. And if Tim Noakes said, "Well, the sun will not rise again tomorrow morning," I think I would believe him, because he's such an honest man of great integrity. And going through this lifestyle and finding out more and more along the way, I have discovered that it almost seems as though everybody who ends up on this lifestyle has a great deal of integrity, because they've got nothing to gain. And that is where the diet industry may be, why they hate us, because they have everything to gain from all these different diet books and the diet of the year, and you know that this is the diet everyone's talking about. And the thing that really shocked me the most about doing what I've been doing is the amount of people who've said to me, "Oh, you've lost weight." And it's 35 kilos I've lost now. "You've lost weight. What have you been taking?" And that really upsets me. That the automatic assumption is that you can't lose weight unless you take pills or have injections. That worries me. Especially in this country, it's very prevalent. People seem to feel here that unless it's a medication of some sort, it isn't worth doing or knowing or having. And you definitely are not going to get results unless you're taking some sort of a pill. Surely you take supplements, and I don't. I don't need to. One thing I'm convinced of, talking about supplements and medication, is that for a lot of women of menopausal age, I think that it will be a great deal easier to go through that transition if you are at least low carbohydrate. Better if you are carnivore. I haven't killed anybody yet, and I'm quite proud of myself. But I haven't taken any medication for it, and I'm managing. And I've had no weird sort of side effects of going through the menopause, and I do attribute it I've seen plenty of women my age. I've worked with many women and of the same age who've said, "Oh, I can't take it anymore. I feel so awful. I can't sleep. I can't do this. I can't do that." And I thought, what are they talking about? It just hasn't happened to me. I know it's definitely not genetic, because I know my mother had a very bad time. So it's not that I can say, well, it's a genetic thing. I didn't expect to have a bad time. It's not. I think I'm firmly convinced that it's what I don't eat that has made the difference.
Yeah. I think that's really important to note. It's what you don't eat.
Yes.
You know, everyone these days, they think about the medicine or the pill or something like that. It's the what you can take or what you can eat. And I mean, that's probably going to get worse in the future as well, or a
Yes.
stronger feeling among the populace. But yeah, it's actually just about cutting it out, not putting it in, not
Yes.
adding it.
I worked for 8 years at a very large old age home in Johannesburg, and it was distressing, very distressing to watch people arriving. At the time when I first started working there, the admission age was 65, and it was distressing to watch people arrive full of life, full of beans, independent, still driving their own vehicles, they're looking after themselves, doing their own cooking, cleaning, washing, ironing, and so on. I always used to say that because they're in independent living, they're just like you and me, only a little bit older. That's all. Watching them deteriorate, some of them so fast, into dementia was really frightening. Um, it upset me immensely to watch people going from being independent enough to drive themselves on holiday somewhere. They wouldn't need to ask for family's help, or can you please take me here or there. No, independent people, off they went. To watch someone like that, someone just like you or me, in a matter of months, be unable to care for themselves, unable to feed themselves. In some cases, they deteriorated so fast that they went from the independent living village straight into full frail care without any stops in between. And it was scary to watch. And I am firmly of the opinion that it is what they were eating or are still eating. The catering company obviously uses dietitians, but as we all know, the dietitians also use the high carbohydrate model. We had dietitians who were recommending the what they termed the specialist diabetes diet to residents, especially those who are in semi-frail care and full frail care, who didn't have kitchen facilities available to them where they could make their own meals. But those who were eating in the dining room and were diabetic were given things like brown rice, for example, baked potatoes in their skins, and all of that sort of thing, whole wheat pasta, and lots of fruit, brown bread, sugar-free cold drinks. So it was amusing, but not really. It's not funny when you know that there is something that can be done and you're powerless to do it. I could not have gone in there all gung-ho and said, you're wrong, you can't do that. It's the worst possible thing that you can give these people. I would have lost my job. And besides, it wouldn't have done any good. Nobody would have listened. One resident did listen. I mentioned it in my email. She was 89, and she was beginning to become immobile. When she came in, she was a translator. She translated English novels and also technical books into Afrikaans. Very, very talented woman. And she started to become very dependent on a walker. And one day she said to me, I have to ask you, how did you lose weight? So I explained sort of briefly the bare bones of what I'd done. And she said, would you write that down for me? She said, I'm really beginning to put on weight and it's having a bad effect on my legs and my knees, and I'm not walking very easily anymore. Would you write it down for me? So I wrote down a very brief description of what you should and shouldn't eat and gave it to her. And about 2 months later, she came to see me for a separate matter, something to do with maintenance that she needed having done. And she said to me, oh, I must say to you, thank you very much. And I thought, well, what for? She said, look. And she stood up and put her hand between her skirt waistband and her skin. And she said, look at that. My skirt is loose now. She said, I don't know how much weight I've lost. She said, but I'm going to need new clothes. And she said, that's because of you. Thank you. And she was the only person who took me seriously. And at 89, I don't think that's too bad at all.
It's awesome that you were able to give that information to, just one person. It can change everything for that one person. That's awesome.
Yes, I may not. In the job that I was in, I was very visible. I was the facilities manager, and I was always all over the place. I dealt with all the contractors, and whenever there was a building project of some sort, I'd be the one to get the contractors to come and give me the quotes and show them what it was that we needed to have done. And many of them, I might not have seen them for a number of months, and many of them would say, what have you done? And again, you tell them, and oh no, I couldn't do that. No, I could never give up my bread. No, I couldn't. What do you eat at lunchtime? And it was even worse then when I would say, nothing. I don't want to eat at lunchtime. I'm not hungry. My colleagues, it was quite funny eventually. My colleagues would get cake from residents, or it'd be somebody's birthday, and they'd come past my door and they'd say, I'm not offering you any. And I said, no, thank you. There's no point in offering you anywhere, and you don't ever want it anyway. And sometimes they would come to me and say, there's 3 or 4 slices left over. Would I like to take some for my husband? And he was always thrilled if there was a birthday or something at work, because he would get my piece. But no, they took it for granted. I don't want it. And they wouldn't even offer it to me. And initially they would say, we don't want to offend you. You don't want it, do you? And I'd say, no, thank you. And that would be it. And eventually they just didn't bother. Sometimes I didn't even know that there was, in fact, cake in the office, simply because nobody offered me any. And it was nice to know that they took me that seriously, that they understood that for me this wasn't just a passing whim, that I wasn't going to give it up in 2 weeks' time. And after 4 years, they realized that, yes, this is it. She's really serious.
So, Sarah, is there a way people can reach out to you if they want to get in contact?
Yes, I do have a website. It's called Sarah Against the Grain, and that's you can also get hold of me at Facebook as well. Again, it's also called Against the Grain, and I'm on Twitter as well. Just go for S Against Grain, and you'll find me. And if you want to chat to me about the whole process, I'd be very happy to speak to people. I always say each one teach one. I think it's absolutely crucial that the message goes out. It is, why are you asking me what pills I took? It's the food I'm not eating, which is the crucial thing, not the pills I didn't take. It's for free. It's for free. We all have to eat something. So make sure that you're going to eat something which is nutritious, healthy, and available. It's not like this is weird and you've got to go to a butcher on the other side of the country to go and find this stuff. It's what we all eat every day. I was fully vegetarian for 5 years, and it was the most difficult 5 years of my life, food wise. It really was. But I love bacon, I love pork, I love chicken skin, and all these yummy things that we can eat freely. And it was extremely difficult to cook that kind of thing for my family and not touch it myself. Um, and it didn't do me a blind bit of good because it didn't help me to lose weight. And I was tired, absolutely exhausted all the time. I really did not gain anything from it at all. And the main reason why I did it was not for some fantastic altruistic save the planet reason. It wasn't. It was save the Sarah. That was the only reason I did it, and it was a dismal failure. And it was 5 very difficult years. And I would never. And when I look back now and I think, my goodness, it is nearly 5 years I've been doing low carbohydrate, and it's just whizzed by, and it's been so easy. I honestly thought it was going to be an absolute trial. Um, People are this is the beginning of the year, and people are now full of all New Year's resolutions. And the last couple of weeks of December, you don't get anybody wanting to change their lifestyle. You must be joking and miss out on all that pudding. And no, thank you. I'll think about that in January. I can remember starting this seriously just before Christmas, and everyone said, "Oh, you won't stick to it." And I thought, watch me. And I did. It was possibly one of the stupidest times to decide to start something like this. But again, it wasn't, because it threw me in at the deep end. It was a real baptism of fire, and I coped. And I will never forget, after Christmas Day that year when I started, everyone had gone home and I was on my own, faced with this mountain of washing up and all this leftover pudding. And I just put it all into little containers, put it in the fridge, made myself a cup of tea, and I never even looked at it. And when the children came home the next day, they said, "Oh, I suppose you've eaten all the pudding." I said, "No, it's in the fridge. Help yourself." It was wonderful. I've never, ever experienced Christmas like it. Never. That I didn't touch it. I was absolutely jubilant. It was wonderful.
Sometimes those sink or swim moments are really good for your resolve. If you can swim, it really helps your resolve.
Yes, it
Mm.
did. And I'm very glad now that I took the plunge and decided to do carnivore. It was definitely a turning point for me, definitely. And for anybody who is considering doing it, try it. But don't try it for 3 days and say, "Oh, I can't do this. No, I can't do this." Try it at least 3 months. And if you really don't feel better after that, then go back to whatever it is that you want to go back to. But I honestly think that it's worth it for anybody to try this. Um, your health will thank you, and the we all need to remember that we're getting older. Do you want to be healthy, fit, and attentive with all your grey matter still intact when you're 80, 90, 100? Or do you want to be in a frail care unit? Because I can tell you that's not fun. I definitely don't want to be there. And I'm doing my absolute utmost right now to make sure that I don't end up there. I've seen it and I know. I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to be strong and I'm going to be fit. And in 20 years' time, we can have this conversation again, and both of us will be healthy and strong and fit, thanks to carnivore.
Nice. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with us. I really appreciate it.
It's been great fun. Thank you very much for asking me, Dave. I really appreciate that. It's been great. And yeah, as we said, each one teach one. Let's get the word out.